Here at Drone Film Guide, we're not sent our drones by DJI, which of course is a good thing because it means our views are 100% our own. Now, certainly the Mavic 2 Pro is a fantastic drone. It has met, if not exceeded, our expectations over the last year or so, but that does not necessarily mean it is the right drone for you or worth the expense of upgrading from your Mavic Air or Phantom 4, for example. So we'll talk through what we've learned in the last year, and you might find it useful in your decision-making process. Very happy to tell you that this week's episode is sponsored by Soundstripe. For about 3 years now, we have been sourcing our royalty-free music from Soundstripe.com. We've found it to be a reliable, high-quality source of music. There comes a point at which scouring the internet for free music is an unproductive use of time, so paying a small monthly or annual fee is worth every penny. So we definitely recommend you check out Soundstripe.com. There's a link in the description with a 10% discount code embedded should you be interested. We've also put a playlist down there of 10 tracks that we think are great for drone showreels, so check that out as well. I'm going to quickly run through some of the positives that we've discovered with the Mavic 2 Pro because it is undoubtedly a fantastic piece of kit, so bear with me. I've made a little list here. Most of these will be pretty obvious to you, so I won't hang about. Now, given that this is a long-term review, I can tell you that the build quality of the drone is fantastic. We do look after the drone, so we always use this gimbal hood and fold the propellers up, and we've got a little hard case for it and all that kind of stuff. But for regular use as it is intended, this thing is good as new, and we've had this in about 5 different countries, all over the place, carried around in backpacks, suitcases, etc, etc. It is solid as a rock. We're still on our first set of propellers, I think, so pretty good to know that. Stability and cinematic control. Very important for us as filmmakers. We want nice, smooth images, and I've been very pleased with the way this flies. If you get your settings dialed in right or you use tripod, you get these fantastic creeping motions. The drone is incredibly stable, even in high winds. Definitely smoother to fly than a Phantom series, no doubt about that. Battery life. Yes, you get the stated battery life, 25 minutes. It feels like an age when you're coming from a Mavic Air, for example. Mavic Air claims to give you 20 minutes. It gave us about 12 minutes in winter. Battery life lasts forever. Very, very good. One of the biggest plus points with the Mavic 2 Pro is the OcuSync 2.0 transmission system. Absolutely brilliant. Now, I personally am not interested in flying 8 kilometers away, but what I am interested in is a bulletproof system that is not corrupted by any interference. There are times if you're flying a Mavic Air, for example, you can lose your signal even though it's only 50 meters away from you. If there's interference going on or just something that Wi-Fi transmission does not like, then you've got a problem. This OcuSync has been absolutely bulletproof, and for those of you that do want to fly it miles away, it will serve your needs. For those of us who just want a reliable system, no complaints at all. Variable aperture. Now, most of us don't have drones that have variable aperture, so when you move to a Mavic 2 Pro, it's a very nice thing to have. It's particularly useful when you're using ND filters. We've discussed ND filters at length on this channel. Such a confused but not at all confusing subject, so check out those videos. We do use ND filters, but the beauty here is we can stick an ND 16 on, and then we can use the variable aperture just to adjust the exposure accordingly. So if the cloud goes across the sun a little bit more, we can just bring the aperture down. In other circumstances, without a variable aperture, you're going to have to land that drone, change the ND filter, and it's a massive pain in the backside. So the variable aperture is fantastic. Photographs. If anything, the photographs on this are better than the video. The photographs are absolutely stunning. 20 megapixel photos with that nice big bright sensor, 1-inch sensor that we'll talk about later in a bit. It's really invigorated and re-inspired my love of photography. I've been taking panoramas, stitching them all together in Lightroom. I just absolutely love it. These raw photographs that you can take, superb. It's quiet. I love the fact it's quiet. Not only is it quiet, but it makes a kind of pleasing purring noise compared with the sound of 1,000 screaming bees that the Mavic Air makes. Draws much less attention. Attention is a bad thing when you're flying, so the less attention the better. So this I love. And of course, finally, it is small, it's easy to set up, it's quick, it's practical. undoubtedly is just more pleasant to travel with a Mavic series drone than it is with a Phantom series drone. I flew through all those previous points because I want to spend a little bit more time discussing the camera on this drone, the 1-inch sensor Hasselblad camera. Now, that is 90% of the reason why you buy this drone, the functionality that that camera has. And I can tell you, it is fantastic. It lives up to expectations. The 1-inch sensor gives you a really low noise image, far superior performance to any of the previous Mavics or Phantoms. Added to that, the option of a 10-bit color profile in D-Log really does give you a ton of extra color depth that you can stretch out those colors in post and benefit from the added dynamic range that that brings. So here's the thing, in order to enjoy that lovely 10-bit color profile, you have to shoot in the H.265 codec, which is a nightmare for your computer to process. We use mid-2015 MacBook Pros, which I know they're a little bit old now, but they are still extremely expensive, very powerful computers, and they don't come close to playing back the footage that comes off a Mavic 2 Pro. This has practical considerations. When you're bringing your footage in, you want to skim through it and see the bits that you want to keep and the bits that you want to discard. You just can't do that. You have to do proxy editing, where the editing software creates lower resolution files that you can then play more easily. But not all software supports proxy editing. So you've just bought a Mavic 2 Pro because we all told you it's the best drone out there, and then you find that you need to buy a £2,000 MacBook Pro and a £300 piece of professional editing software to do anything with the footage. I think it's useful that you know that information in advance. Something else you need to know is that this drone does not come with a useful 8-bit color profile. So if you want to give yourself a break and leave the 10-bit stuff aside and just go to old-fashioned 8-bit H.264, the only option you have is normal mode. And it's horrible. It's extremely contrasty in saturation. We do not have a D-Log 8-bit profile. We do not have a D-Cine-like 8-bit profile, which is what you would use on a Phantom 4, for example, for a nice flattish picture profile. Now, I don't know why they've done that, but as a consequence, you cannot buy a $1,500 drone and use it on normal mode. That's crazy. You would never upgrade to this drone. So as a consequence, the only reason you buy this drone is because you're planning on using the 10-bit picture profile. Now, I've already talked about the issue of using the H.265 codec, but as a consequence, you also have to become very proficient at color correcting and color grading footage. The D-Log picture profile is very flat and very desaturated, which is great if you're an experienced filmmaker, but not so good if you haven't had the time to develop your skills in that respect. You're going to have to learn pretty quickly how to add back all that contrast, add that saturation back, just to get to square one before you even start adding a grade. Added to that, as was discussed at the time this drone was launched, the 10-bit picture profile has some barrel distortion on it. Now, it's not a deal breaker and you can remove it in post and get a decent result, but it's, at the end of the day, not a good thing. It's not something you really want to have to bother to do. I should say, over the course of a year, 90% of the shots that we've done haven't even needed defishide. You just would not tell. But when you start putting some tilts in there, you really can tell that the edge of the screen is kind of peeling off a bit, and you see that barrel distortion, and it does need fixed in post. Again, it's one more thing to do, and depending on where you are on your journey as a filmmaker, you might not want to have to go through that process. Now, here's the kicker for me on this whole 10-bit thing. 90% of the time, I don't need the benefit that 10-bit brings. 10-bit is useful if there's a sun in the sky. You've pointed your camera at the sun, you have this big blown out section of brightness in the sky and an underexposed silhouetted landscape. What do? It doesn't really look that good. Well, with a 10-bit picture profile, you know that you have the depth in those colours to recover some of those midtones from the shadows and get a nice, more balanced exposure in post-production, so you can shoot with that in mind. Now, first of all, if all of that is meaningless to you, then you certainly want to reconsider whether this drone is for you. Second of all, on the assumption that you don't have a spare $1,500 lying about to buy one of these, adjust your shooting style. We've been doing this since day one. We've never had the best cameras at our disposal. We don't have $50,000 Arri cameras that we can just point wherever we want and everything looks lovely. We have to adjust our shooting style. So constantly we look and say, oh, well, there's a big sun there. That's not going to look too good. And I'm talking about ground cameras here as well. Let's turn the subject around and shoot the other way. Have the sun behind the camera. Nice balanced exposure between the sky and the ground. These are filmmaking concepts that you need to learn, and this is going to improve your work so much more than having a 10-bit drone that's cost you a lot of money that you don't really know how to use. So after a year of using this drone, do the pros outweigh the cons? Yes, absolutely, by 100 to 1. It's a fantastic drone and we have absolutely loved it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right drone for everyone. So that's just the kind of point I'm trying to make here. Also, it costs $1,500 or £1,500. Now that's tremendous value for an amazing flying camera, but it's still an awful lot of money. And on the assumption we don't all have that kind of spare change in our pockets, it might not be necessary to spend that money if you're doing perfectly well with your Mavic Air or your Phantom 4 or your Phantom 3 for that matter. It's what you do with it that counts. Speaking of which, you might have heard us mention our 8-hour drone cinematography masterclass. I can tell you for certain that your small investment in that will pay off a lot more than investing in a brand new drone if you're wanting to increase the quality of your work. So do check out the link in the description to that. Thank you also to Soundstripe for sponsoring this video. You can check out that playlist of cool drone songs that we've put down there. Do share your thoughts with us on this drone tech review kind of stuff, very sensitive subject. I hope I've not hurt anyone's feelings here. I've not said anything too controversial. Do leave your comments below, I'm sure you will. And until next time, happy flying.